So what is an alcoholic? What makes an alcoholic? Are you an alcoholic?
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
It's a Monday, and that means it's Recovery Monday with Restoring Hope. Joe Mites from St. Gregory's is not here with us, and we should not feel bad. He is on a beach somewhere in, what, Peruvia or someplace foreign?
Mexico.
Mexico?
It's warm there.
Yeah.
Warmer than
no
here.
snow.
It's all kind of relative, I guess.
We got the full crew in today, including Dennis McCauley, as we tackle what should probably be a simple answer to a simple question. But when you get people involved, they want to change it around so it doesn't fit them. But the question is, what is an alcoholic? And do you know one? Or are you one? Oh my gosh, no, I never touch the stuff. You know, never touch the stuff, you say. Good for you. I hope you keep that up. I hope that's your plan and your goal for life. I didn't touch alcohol till I was 34 years old and then made a 16-year career out of it. So it isn't somebody who just drank beer on a country road when they were 12 and smoked a little doobie when they were 14 under the bridge. There are people who face immense pressures, resentments, family dysfunctionality, who at any point in their life can pick up the drink. So Dennis McCauley is one of my fellows, and Bob Montserrat, of course, is a forensics expert on alcohol. Brad, have you ever even drank?
Yes, I was in the Army and I did go to college. So the two of those, while not exclusively for drinkers, caused me to have at least one or two beers in my lifetime.
And Father Tattoo's in the house, and you were never a drinker.
I do drink, but not very often, and it's not something that appeals to me in large quantities.
Okay. And
I'm a one or two beer kind of guy.
And Dennis, do you drink?
By the grace of God, not in 7 years and 2 weeks.
Really? 7 years and 2 weeks?
7 years and 2 weeks, yes.
In 2 weeks or and 2 weeks?
And two weeks, yes.
Oh, that's right. I know that.
Or I would have to do the mathematics to do it in days, which is
well,
you're known for.
How is it you guys know exactly how many years and days? I mean,
I'll tell you why. Can I give you that answer?
Yeah.
And I'm serious as a heart attack. Because it's 1 day at a time. I have been sober 1,016 days. And I know that. And I very rarely have to think about it. It's one of the first things I think about when I wake up in the morning. And I've absolutely placed that number in my head before I get out of bed. Because for me, in the last few years of my drinking, every morning when I woke up, I was mad at myself again. It was Groundhog Day. I had got up in the morning saying, you know, I'm not going to drink today. Because you don't think about weeks or months in the beginning. You think about one day. Can I go this day? Or if you're just a weekend drinker, can I go this weekend? Can I go this happy hour, this golf game, this football game, this pool game, this motorcycle ride, this bicycle ride? But if you drank every day, when you realized, and Dennis, you speak up here, because I'm just talking for me here.
It's all good.
But when I realized that I needed to quit drinking was about 4 years before I quit. Okay? And there wasn't hardly a morning that I didn't wake up and I didn't say, oh, crap. You know?
Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And about once or twice a week, I'd say, I'm not going to drink today. And then 45 minutes to an hour after the time I'd opened my first cocktail, I'm losing it. I'm not going to go through this. I'm not going to sit here and suffer like this. I'll just have a drink.
Oh, and the guilt and shame gets on you. You know, the evil one in your head, and it's a miserable way of living.
It is,
especially when you know better.
So, what is it? Is it a craving that you get? You mean like being hungry, like when you want to eat, or you're really hungry, and so you have to take in food, or you know, if you're fasting and all. What is it?
What is it for you?
What are you feeling when you can't not have a drink?
Well, I mean, I went through the detox treatment route, and you know, and everybody, I know Joe would disagree with the disease model because we talked about that before. Right. And to each his own, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you either, it's like, I don't know, I've heard it say, I'm a musician by hobby, and people will say, how do you know when you have rhythm? Well, it's you know when you don't have rhythm. Yeah. And how do you know when you're an alcoholic is, I mean, you just know it. But, you know, there's the talk in some of the 12-step manuals or reading material about the obsession of the mind and the craving of the body, and you can detox your body from the substance. But because you've got years and years of you drink when you're happy, you drink when you're sad, you drink when you mow, you drink when you grill, you drink when you fish, you drink when you hunt. I mean, you name and so your body's just your mind's accustomed to the drinking.
A psychological addiction.
It is very much so.
A physiological addiction.
And I think that the psychological aspect is the toughest thing to get over.
Yeah.
Did I hear you say you thought it is a disease, though?
I do. I believe in the disease concept.
Okay, and what would make wanting to have a beer a disease, or 20 beers in an alcoholic's case? Like how do you? I guess that's not something you. Whoops! I fell into alcoholism. You kind of have to intentionally get there, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's at least a self-inflicted disease. We could agree there.
Absolutely. Okay. I think there are people walking around today that have the alcoholic gene, if you will, and as long as you don't introduce alcohol or a certain level of alcohol or a systematic way of drinking alcohol, they'll go their whole life without suffering from the disease of alcoholism. But once you start entering the substance into the already target-rich environment, for lack of a better way to describe it,
sure,
then it's a build-up thing. I mean, some people talk about, I knew as soon as the first time I drank that because of the effects that it gave me or this and that, I just knew that was going to be something that they craved, you know, for the rest of their lives. And other people, it's just a slow process.
Now, let me ask you a question, though. Wouldn't just calling it a predisposition to sin, you know, like let's take homosexuality. We're making a parallel here, but I believe some people are born predisposed to entertain the sexual thoughts of somebody of their same sex. They're born with it. I think they're predisposed to feel that way. Is that possible that maybe the same thing's true of alcoholism, where you're predisposed? I mean, you were talking about the gene. Maybe it's not necessarily that they have to become alcoholics, but they're just predisposed to that disposition.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly on both. Yeah.
Okay.
Now remember, for me, and I don't know if I'll ever figure this out, and maybe it's not important that I don't figure it out. But I was raised in a family that when Dad got home, Dad and Mom had a couple beers. And then they broke out the H&H, which is a bourbon. And there was very, very few times when alcohol was not in our house. I knew where the liquor cabinet was. I remember as a kid going down there and taking a little swig of slow gin and thinking that was the worst tasting stuff I'd ever smelled. I remember going all the way through college, working in nightclubs as a DJ, and I'd have maybe one gin and tonic in the night and then probably not even finish it. But at age 34, I started drinking and I couldn't stop.
You know, it's really weird you didn't start with like beer or something like that.
So do I have a predisposition then?
Well, I think that your family set you up for it. I mean, I think that there's the shaping of that. I mean, I'm certainly more prone to drink a beer because I watched my father drink a beer than if my dad had turned it down. Some of that training becomes ingrained in us. Mm-hmm. Now, my dad drank responsibly, and ergo I drink responsibly. My dad, he's the guy that can have 2 beers and say, oh, that's enough for me. And that's the way I feel about it. I've been drunk a handful of times in my life. I've never enjoyed it once, and it's never been something I've tried to repeat night after night.
Yeah, the first step in a 12-step program is to realize that your life has become unmanageable and you are powerless over alcohol. Well, when I started drinking seriously at age 34, that second part of that step didn't make any sense to me. Of course I was powerless. That was the point of drinking. Mm-hmm. I didn't start drinking to be social. I started drinking because I wanted to get drunk. It wasn't any fun till I had 6 or 7. But you know what? I couldn't drink in the morning. No way. There was no flavor for it. I had no urge. I had no desire. I didn't drink at lunch. You know, I had buddies that would go out and they'd have a beer at lunch. Yuck, I don't want to. But you get me about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm home. I'm not going anywhere. My schedule's clear. Kids are all taken care of. Then
It's party on.
yeah, it's party on.
Yeah.
And I was the basement in the dark with the TV drinker.
Isolated.
Mac, how long do you think that pattern could have lasted until it would have broken to you were just drunk almost all the time?
Oh, I don't know. I never broke that pattern.
Sure.
I mean, 16 years, I never. I mean, I can count on the number of times when my buddy Vic and I would get up on a Saturday morning and start smoking ribs or a bone or something like that, and we'd wait till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon to have a Bloody Mary.
So you don't think you would ever? Because what I've noticed with a lot of alcoholism, it's a progression, and it's not a slow progression always, but it's always a progression. And I know with my own drug use, I started smoking pot. That was all I was ever going to do. When at the end of my drug use, I was doing cocaine for about 6 months. I'd put $700 up my nose in one weekend, and I woke up 2 days later in a place that I lived, not remembering how I got back there, and there was just blood everywhere from my nose bleeding. But it was a progression from the pot to I tried this, I tried that, and the next thing I was places I didn't want to be. And I've noticed with my friends that have been alcoholics, either they still are or have since stopped. It used to be we drank a 6-pack on the weekends, and then it was a 12-pack on the weekends, and then it was a 24-pack on the weekend. Then it was a 6-pack every night, and on the weekends we drank a 24-pack. And before long, and not we, because I never did that, but before long, they were drinking 12 packs a day, every day, sometimes in the mornings, anytime they could find a way to separate. You don't think you would have ever gotten to that point where you'd have broken the responsibility? Because then I would say you have control of it. If you can control when you're this way, I would argue that you have phenomenal control.
I don't know. I mean, there are so many different levels of alcoholism.
Well, and the subject matter for today's show is, are you an alcoholic? And I mean, there's high functioning alcoholics, and I think there's a myth to that to a certain degree. You think you're functioning at a high level, but I bet that running the tape back would prove different. But there are people that are professional and are successful, and the Skid Row living in a refrigerator box under a bridge, theory is totally.
Yeah. Now, I would have told you that my drinking after 6 o'clock at night never impacted the first 12 hours of my day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But Dennis, you and I know that's malarkey.
Mm-hmm. And my question is, for those high functioning, how fast could they go from being what they think is high functioning, just like one thing hits them that they weren't expecting and knocks them completely off the rail, and then they're...
I don't know. I was never a binge guy. I mean, I stayed pretty consistent. Mm-hmm. I drank after 5:30, whenever I was home and it was clear.
Well, I think anybody that abuses a substance, though, fancies themselves a high functioning. I mean, I know especially when I smoked a lot of pot, I always thought nobody could tell. Now, years later, people have come up and been like, "It's nice to see you not stoned," or my parents that I thought I had fooled, they didn't know what to say to me. It wasn't that they didn't know I was high. There was nothing they could do at that point. I was already high. I was there. Trying to intervene at that point would have been disastrous. I thought I was high functioning, but probably in reality, people knew that I was high the whole time.
All right. I've posted the question on my Facebook page, and I really do have the greatest Facebook people in the world. And probably one of the reasons why is I like everybody. I mean, I take the guys that don't believe in Jesus, and I take the guys that, are super Jesus freaks, and I love them all because I love their opinion. I posed the question online. We'll talk about that. Also, the phone lines are open at 1-855-244-0077. Love to hear your phone call today. And the question is simply, are you an alcoholic? And if you are, when did you know? And if you don't think you are, is that because you never drink? Or you never become drunk? Or you never lose control? It's an interesting question for those of us that want to know. We're coming back live today. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. This is Restoring Hope, live on webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Fight the good fight on a Rebels Cause Radio, Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on a rebelscause.com. A Rebels Cause Radio is edutainment.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting Him by faith, what He did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
My buddy Matt Baird from Spoken singing that for us today here over in Restoring Hope, the Monday edition. Dennis McCauley is my guest, along with Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, who is a alcohol forensic specialist with the state of Iowa. Of course, Army Brad is with us, Father Tattoo in the studio, and King David producing today. I've got the NCADD self-test of what are the signs of alcoholism, and we'll go through that in just a minute. But first, I want to read you what some of the comments online. Well, wait, let's go to the phone call first. Let's go to our phones first because we got somebody holding. Hi, you're live on Restoring Hope. Who's this? Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just great now.
All right. This is Kimberly. I was listening to your conversation, and being a child of two alcoholics, I am aware that I can go into a room and see 1,000 men and pick out the one that's the most charming alcoholic ever. So that's my addiction. But you and I talked before, Mac, and my father, and I'll just throw this out to you, my father was an alcoholic for years. He's dead, or else I would say still is. But it's amazing because I've gone through so many treatment centers with sons and fathers and been a part of that whole thing where, you know, you talk to person and tell them how much they've hurt you and so on and so forth. What I've learned is, and everybody has their different views, but the alcoholic that I've heard is allergic to liquor. And that was kind of amazing to me because their bodies are allergic to it, but yet they still drink it. But my father, after treatment, and he was married to my mother, who is a lovely person, but she's a little bit of a negative. No, she's a lot negative. My father went through treatment, they divorced, and he never had a drink again. And he never had a desire for it. What they said was, there is such a thing as a situational alcoholic. I don't know what you guys feel about that, but Mac, you and I talked before, and your story is kind of similar to my dad's, and it might be that could be something that you had.
Yeah, Kim, thanks for calling. I appreciate you listening. Love you. Yeah, I mean, that's the tough part. He drinks heavily while he's married to this woman, and he gets a divorce, and he stops drinking. How many people do we know in a 12-step program that have gotten divorced after they stopped drinking because they were no longer compatible?
Lots. It happens tons of times, but there are sister programs for people that have addictions and alcoholism, that because it's a family disease. You hear it said all the time around tables, but
yeah.
But like what Brad was talking about earlier, like when you get to where do you get to that point where the record flips and then you're dependent upon the alcohol, and there's a lot of life situational things that happen in a person's life where you're pushing up against the limit on it, and then something happens, and then you just go into full-blown drinking because that's your coping mechanism. You don't want to feel whatever it is. And I mean, and this is my theory, my experience from being around. I don't pretend to have any kind of a educational background in any of this stuff other than just the hard knock lessons of life.
Yeah, 7 years of experience, though. That's a lot. And Kimberly also said something about it being allergic. We hear that in the rooms a lot. Absolutely. Of 12-step programs, that people are allergic to it. And I think usually those are the ones that their behavior changes drastically. My behavior changed drastically. I became quiet, shy, timid, didn't want to talk to people, didn't yell at the football game, didn't yell at my wife. I mean, my wife would tell you, she knew that I was drinking, but she never knew it was a problem until one day I said to her, I really want to stop drinking. And she said, why? And I said, I think it's becoming a problem. She said, really? What tells you that? And it was mostly what was going on between my ears. But I think a lot of times people who are allergic to it are those people who react so violently or so negatively to people. And that's where they notice the allergicness of it. All right, let's go to my Facebook. I love my Facebook friends. And the question is, how do you know when you're an alcoholic? Louis says, when it negatively impacts your priorities. Thank you. When it negatively impacts your priorities and you can't live without drinking or being drunk. Chris says, when you find yourself hanging out with me too much. I think he meant him. Mary said, when it causes any sort of problem in your life. William says, when you have to call your friends to find out what you did last night. Anita said, when you ask yourself, am I an alcoholic? John said, unexplained tattoos is a good indicator. Father Tattoo likes that. Robin says, if you have to ask, you probably are. David says, when alcohol causes problems in your life and you can't stop. Debbie says, when you're hiding it from others and lying about it. And then David came back and said, it can be just one drink or many, but when it causes a problem and you don't stop, then it's a problem. Dennis, when did you know it was a problem for you?
Mac, I knew I was an alcoholic for probably 15 years before I quit drinking. I knew I just didn't drink like regular people. Yeah. But I hadn't had life circumstances like drunk driving and divorces and never raised a hand to my wife and, kicked the dog or this and that. And so, and my family and those around me told me, man, you got a problem with this. You got a problem with this, and I never fell down. I mean, all the cliches are the standard,
right.
But I knew that I didn't drink like normal people for years and years before I ever stopped.
Yeah, I had somebody say in a meeting once, I thought that was funny. You know you're an alcoholic when you're sitting around a table with 4 or 5 buddies. And you're having beers or drinking. And somebody says, all right, it's time to go. It's the alcoholic that can't leave the table till every glass and every bottle is empty. Especially your own. And I can remember that. I can remember. Well, you're not going to finish your drink? Nah, I don't need it. Well, give it to me.
Yeah, and then stop at a store on your way home to make sure you had more or when you got home or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's another ugly side of it.
Yes, it is.
That really is an ugly side. You know you're an alcoholic when you begin to think forward on how long your inventory, your stash, your bottles will last you. Because you know how much you drink. You know exactly how much you drink. There's no guessing on it. It's always within whatever it is, a few ounces or whatever, a few shots. And when you figure out your stash won't last you as long as your inhibition, is that the right word, is going to be there, then you panic.
Yeah, I think of my father when he would come to visit us here. He'd drive from Jersey to Iowa, and as soon as he saw us, the first thing he asked me is, "Where's the liquor store?"
Yeah.
He says, "I need to get out there. I need to buy a bottle." Well, what he in fact did was bought like a bottle per day.
Yeah.
And he was hiding it. And then when he left, I went to the trash can, and here were all the empty bottles, one a day for every day he was there.
Yep.
So to me, I knew, wow. And he was an alcoholic along with a couple of his brothers. 3 of his brothers were alcoholics also. But I never really touched alcohol. But I guess from what we were talking about, you're saying that there may be possibility of a gene that I would have a tendency toward that.
Yeah.
But I had no desire because I could see as a sober person what it was doing to the entire family.
Now, what was your faith like at that time?
Well, I was a churchgoer back then. I mean, that's
you
one
were a
thing they
believer.
sent me.
Had you surrendered? Were you born again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's probably why.
No, that's a part of it because that was the influence of that day was you should avoid that.
Yeah.
Alcohol at all costs, and then of course I saw the effects of it from the family, and I didn't want to have any part of that. So I don't know if that's something where if I started, I would have that tendency because of my family. I don't know.
All right, let's go some of these. Let's go through some of these questions. By the way, phone lines are open at 1-855-244-0000. Love to hear from you. The National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence has a test, and it has 26 questions, and I'm certainly not going to go through them all. But at the end, then you score my test. Ooh. I don't know if I want to take this or just ask the questions.
Well, Mac, the one thing before you start this, if I was to take this when I was in college, I probably would fail it. But it was I've never considered myself an alcoholic. Never. I don't think anybody else that knows me would.
I think you were delusional. If you would have failed that test and you don't think you were an alcoholic, whether you were able to pull out of it or not, doesn't mean that
if
the
you're
damage.
An alcoholic, how could you pull out of it?
You know what? These guys are pulled out of it. Obviously, you can pull out of it.
Okay.
I mean, that's
let's hear the
Matt.
test.
I just like it. You called him delusional. I was waiting for a little action.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're the guy that says, well, in college, I mean, I was drunk all the time. Well, you were an alcoholic in college. I'm glad you got out of it without a recovery program. But that's not how everybody gets out.
Father Tattoo, that if I can just correct you for a second,
please do.
What we're talking about here is in the question: if you're are you an alcoholic? We're talking about a definition that's defined. We're not talking about do you act like a drunk, do you drink too much?
No. I'm saying if he failed that,
because Brad would not have been an alcoholic at some point in his life and then stop being one without going through some type of an impact, some type of low.
The impact could have been, hey, I got to get my life started. I mean, my impact would pull me out of drugs, and I mean, I've been on some pretty crazy stuff, and what pulled me out of drugs wasn't a recovery. It was I literally woke up and realized I had probably almost died. And for me, that jolted me out of it, and I never went back.
Okay, so you had an event.
Sure.
Okay.
But that event
Brad, did you have an event?
That changed the way I drank? Nothing that changed it, but there's things that, looking back, I'm like, that should have been an event if I would have been.
Can you have a beer now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if I don't, I've never been to the point where I'm like, oh, I have to stop and get something.
But I think that's a sign of somebody curtailed it before it got to the worst possible scenario. I mean, a lot of people, when they define alcoholism, it's really the worst. Oh, my liver was failing and I was having 24. You know, the alcoholism starts and is present a long time before anybody ever identifies it. That dependency starts, you know, when you can't go over to your friend's house without him be like, hey, you want a beer? And he's got a beer in his hand. That guy, he might be an alcoholic and you don't realize it yet because he's not drinking 24 a day, but he's drinking those 6 and he doesn't let go of those, you know. And I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of guys in college were alcoholics. I think a lot of them grew up. I think that's great. I think a lot of them probably should stay away from alcohol. I know my generation still has a huge problem with alcohol on the weekends. I know so many parents that are great parents Monday through Friday, but Friday night comes and their kids are at grandma and they're drunk till Sunday. And, you know, that just carries over from the college days. You know, some people grow up, some people don't. I don't know that we should not define them as alcoholics. You know, I think it's not acting like a drunk. It's when you're drunk all the time.
No, it's not, to be honest with you, because I can tell you that I had alcoholic behavior long before I took up a drink. I had alcoholic behavior in high school. I had alcoholic behavior in college. I had alcoholic behavior in my life up until 34, and then I started drinking. And my behavior didn't change except for the fact that I went to the basement quicker and went to bed quicker.
What do you mean by alcoholic behavior? I mean, if you're not drinking alcohol, how is it a behavior?
We'll talk about that when we come back. That's a great question. What is alcoholic behavior? We'll also get into some of these questions. All right, it's about 25 before the top of the hour, and we're coming back live here on Restoring Hope on webcast1live.com.
No music. You're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond. Everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
All right, we're back. It's a Monday, Restoring Hope here on 99.3 KTIA. Remember that we plan to have the Truth Project at the Incredible Pizza this Thursday. Now, I can't tell you what'll happen because of the snow. I mean, I'm just as Iowan as everybody else out there. I'm getting all excited because Ed Wilson's telling me there's a big snowstorm coming, and I'm already planning why we won't have the show and we'll stay at home.
1 to 2 feet.
Yeah. So I don't know whether we'll have that. All I can tell you is we'll send out a notice if we're not going to have it via email, and everybody who comes has email, or I'll also put it on my Facebook page. Or you can just call me on my cell if you don't have Facebook or you're not on the email list, and we'll tell you. But I'm not going to ask people to come out if there's crappy snowy weather. That's just there's no reason for that.
Well, the alcoholic in me tells me there's a storm coming, and so man, it's time to get stockpiled.
That's
too.
right. That's right. You're exactly right. Better go to the store and
other people buy milk and bread and.
That's right.
What was your drink of choice? Was it beer?
Yeah, I was a beer drinker. Yeah.
So if you heard it was going to storm Wednesday night, Thursday, and part of Friday, how much would you buy?
Oh, dude, at the tail end, I had a keg on tap at my house.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so
it was always flowing.
Yeah.
All right. Kathy adds to our Facebook page, which says there's a switch inside me that knows when to stop drinking. Now, I didn't always have that switch, but it's there now. I don't believe that an alcoholic has this switch and knows when to quit. That's a good comment. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like that allergic comment. All right. So what was the question that you asked, Brad, that we said we were going to answer when we came back?
Oh, I was just commenting on the questions that if it's over my lifetime, especially my college years, that I bet my answers at the end when you add it up would say, oh, you're an alcoholic. But my life since then, I would argue that I'm not. And one thing that when talking to people that are alcoholic, they want to say, well, no, you just are, you just don't realize it. I'm like, well, I can walk away from beer and I'll have one, but I don't have to have one.
Yeah, understand if you can walk away from it, you're good. You're fine. You're just a guy who drinks too much from time to time. Because an alcoholic can't walk away from it.
No.
There becomes a point when you've got you're tethered to the alcohol.
Yeah, because in my college years, they'd get to a point where I should have quit, but you're in the moment and you're partying with and then all of a sudden,
right?
The next day you wake up and you're hungover. And
so we were talking about alcoholic behavior.
Alcoholic behavior, yeah.
And one of the things you learn when you go through a 12-step program is what alcoholic behavior it is. And the hardest thing for a normie, someone who's not an alcoholic, you two are normies, right? That's the term we use. Mm-hmm. The hardest thing for you to understand is that we have alcoholic behaviors when we are not using or drinking. I did not drink until I was 34 years old, and yet I will tell you that I was a terrible alcoholic when it came to my behaviors. What are those behaviors? Self-centered. You got to be at the center of everything. If you're not in control of everything, then you're going to cause so much chaos to the people around you that they'll be a bubble off plum. They won't be able to know what's right or wrong, and then you'll be controlling. Okay? FIDS. I love FIDS. Fear of impending doom. You would literally make a mountain out of a molehill. Okay? Your wife calls and says, what time are you going to be home tonight, honey? Oh, usual time, about 6. Okay. Do you need me to bring home anything? No, we just need to talk. The alcoholic goes into fear of impending doom, FIDS. And he starts to think about, oh, what is that? What happened? What did I do? What did I say? What could be wrong? And they just go crazy. And then you get home and the wife says, I just wanted to tell you I love you, and I just felt kind of funny doing it on a phone. No big deal. And you realize you just wasted 4 hours of your day with the committee in your head. What'd you call it? The broken glass committee?
Yeah, broken glass rattling around.
Yeah. And you've created this incredible fear of impending doom.
You know everybody suffers from that, right?
Well, I don't know. Do they?
I don't think so.
I mean, when you called me today and said we got to talk, I was trying to think what possibly could Mac want that we have to talk. But I don't think I'm an alcoholic, Mac.
No, I don't think so either. But
and he wasn't expecting you to say how much you love him, but that was...
I wasn't. I didn't expect that. That was weird. It was awkward.
We'll call you delusional.
What are other alcoholic behaviors?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, if it makes me feel good or I get pleasure from it, I'm going to do it to extreme. And that can be everything from eating Oreo cookies to drinking your favorite cola product or whatever, or, you know, fill in the blank. You know, it's just...
Yeah, we don't understand moderation. That would be something else.
But that doesn't label someone that eats a package of Oreos as an alcoholic.
Or having alcoholic behavior, yeah.
But that is the alcoholic behavior, though.
Yeah.
If you can't control what you're eating, then that's similar to not controlling what you're drinking.
And I think many in America have, I don't know what the right term is, but like a food like alcoholism where they just can't stop. Look at the obesity problems.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a more painful problem than we really give credit for. Sorry.
I think another alcoholic behavior is that we worry about things that we have no control over, and there's no way we're ever going to have control over them. And so we choose to worry about them because we can't do anything about them.
I think that's normal behavior.
You're probably an alcoholic. You better be careful.
I mean, I worry about everything. That's just, I wonder, and guys, I'm not trying to be the jerk here, but I wonder if a lot of you guys' personality defects that maybe we all share, you guys are attributing to your abuse of alcohol, and it's really just, part of a broken personality. I mean, we get back to this, and this is why this show is so important, because we bring it back to the Bible, right? And we're looking at the result of a fallen world here in sin, and maybe it's our sin problem, maybe it's our guilt. I know for me that fear thing, I'm always, even if I haven't done anything, I used to be a thief. I can't go into a store without buying stuff now because I assume that they're going to think I stole something if I just walk in. It took me years to be able to walk into a store and not buy something, even if I didn't want it, because I didn't want them to think I was going to steal it from them because I was so guilty. And it's that kind of fear that you guys just kind of described. You know, my wife would call me and say, "Hey, I wanted to talk to you," and I would immediately freak out and be like, "What did she find? You know, what did I forget?" Even though I had nothing to hide. You know, and I just think some of this is just your broken personalities that a lot of us share, and maybe it is a precursor to alcoholism. Maybe it's a gateway to alcohol. Because alcohol covers that. You know, you feel great. I know when I'm high or drunk, I don't care.
Okay. And don't use the term character defects rather than broken personalities.
Okay. I mean,
that's really what they are. They're defects in your character.
Sure. I agree with that. I'm just wondering out loud here. I mean, I'm not trying, like I said, I'm not trying to be the guy that's like, "Oh, I think you," but I think a lot of people embody these. I mean, this is why this show is helpful to more than just alcoholics. Anyway,
absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
You look at these personalities, these are detrimental personality traits. You spend your life worrying about what your wife's called you and asked you, said, "Hey, I want to talk when we go home." My wife does it all the time, and she's like, "Well, I just haven't spent time with you in a while." And it's like, yeah, I had no. I thought I spent too much money. I thought you found something on the computer that wasn't supposed to be there. You know, and I'm like, man, I don't even know where that came from. I'm trying to think of defenses for things that I didn't do.
Denial is a big part of alcoholism and the alcoholic behavior. You simply ignore what the real culture is, what the real problem is, and you probably try to wash it away or drown it.
Well, and
as some would say,
in some of the literature that you and I are familiar with, it says drinking was just a symptom of our problems, and that's the unpeeling of the onion or the taking off the layers and digging it back, and you're chasing the rabbit back into the hole to see exactly why I behave the way I behave, and a lot of times you find out that it has nothing to do with the first drink you have, but then I would then go to the alcoholic gene, or you got that in you. Now,
sure.
It is a sin problem, man. It's a dirty old world we live in, and for those that have that alcoholic gene, I think it just requires more and more and more, because of the sin problem as you talked about it.
Now let me relate my experience and ask you guys a question here.
You have 40 seconds.
40 seconds. Were you guys searching for something while you were being alcoholics? Was there something you were looking to the alcohol to fulfill in you that wasn't fulfilled otherwise?
Sure.
What was it?
Well, there's tons of things, but one of the things I will tell you was that I didn't like fear.
Sure.
And I was afraid of things. And I'm not talking about bump in the night. I'm talking about relationship things, abandonment, betrayal. And so it was just easier to drink. All right, we've got a phone call. We'll take that when we come back. Short segment when we're back, and we'll go through a couple of the questions. That's live here on Restoring Hope on a Monday on webcast1live.com.
tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
It's the Monday edition, RestoringHopeLive.com here on 99.3 KTIA. You've got Michael Mudloff coming up next with True Blue, a show sponsored and produced by KTIA and also Westkirk Presbyterian Church. All right, let's go to the phones real quick. Hi, you're live on Restoring Hope. Who's this?
This is Frank.
Hey, Frank, how are you?
Hey, I think part of the recipe to this problem is anytime I've lost something that I've had any success in finding, I've tried to go back and retrace my steps as carefully as I possibly could. And I think if you'll go back and retrace your steps through the Bible, you'll find that your diet is probably the number one contributor to addictive type personality traits as far as tobacco, caffeine, alcohol, any type of sexual addictions, lustful addictions, et cetera, et cetera. I think your diet is the number one contributor to this.
So be honest with you, I've never heard that, Frank.
Well, I'll give you a good example.
Yes, please do.
How many people do you know that drink but don't smoke? But yet you know a lot of people who smoke and drink. For example, I believe tobacco is a number one leader to the desire for alcoholism. Now, that's not always the case, but you'll just generally find that there's not I don't feel there's a lot of alcoholics who don't smoke.
Well, there is, the casinos have figured this out, that alcohol and cigarettes, whatever addiction that person is suffering from, it's easy to add gambling.
See, I think when you indulge your appetite, I mean, this is the first sin in the Garden of Eden, was the fact that Eve indulged her appetite. And I think that's been the downfall of man ever since, because, I'm just a firm believer that when you lose something, you go back and you retrack your steps. And that's where I pinpoint addictions coming from. And I can't give you all the specifics of it, but I think that if a person will get their diet as closely back to the Garden of Eden diet as they can possibly do it, I think a lot of their addiction problems will fall away.
All right, Frank, I appreciate your input.
Yeah, thank you.
You always have good input, and I appreciate it. What are you looking up there, Dennis?
1 John 2, for the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, and pride in our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but are of this world. And possessions, positions, and pleasures And I think you can be addicted to exercise. You can be addicted to work, having shiny things and big houses and food and you name it, you know.
So I guess my question is, since you are no longer drinking, Mac, you too, what are you filling? What is that? What's filling that void that's replacing the alcohol?
Mine was a spiritual remedy to worldly problems.
Yeah, I would tell you that. I mean, I gained 40 pounds, but I did that within like the first 5 or 6 months, and that's because I was eating more chocolate. I started drinking coffee, and I was putting Yum Yums in the coffee, and
you're also you weren't filling your body with that poison, so then your body can actually start processing nutrients the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Replacing the sugar that was represented in the booze you were drinking by the sugar that you were eating. You were still consuming that without the alcoholic edge, if you will.
But I agree with Dennis. I filled my need to drink, which was not a need to drink. It was a need to not feel. Okay, understand that for me, and I can't speak for Dennis. For me, is I didn't want to feel what I was feeling anymore, and so drinking, I didn't have to feel it. And so when I couldn't fill that with alcohol, I chose for it to be God.
Mac, I have a question for you. And it's something that the last caller made me think of is if you backtracked it because you didn't have God in your life beforehand, did you use alcohol to fulfill something that God had in your life? And then when you stopped drinking, then God came into your life more?
Well, I had God in my life. I didn't have Christ.
Okay.
And I would have, if you would have asked me, Bob, you and I worked together before I stopped drinking. I would have told you there was no difference. I had God, that was good enough. The Jesus thing, that's just fine. If you asked me if I was a Christian, I'd tell you I was Episcopalian. You know, and it was surrendering that addiction to my God and saying, I can't do this. You need to do this for me. Well, you're going to be the strength that I suck into my body instead the alcohol that I'm going to suck into my body.
And Christ and God answered your fears, I would hope, too, if you're strong in your faith. I would hand my fears to God. I'd do it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, it talks about it in the 12-step program, now that you've had a spiritual awakening. And that's what happens. And even those people who come into a 12-step program as an agnostic or an atheist, and God is only mentioned once in 12 steps. Okay, the rest of the time it's a God of your understanding. So we don't push a Christian God. We don't push anything other than you need to learn to surrender. Because people who are alcoholics do not surrender. They suck in. They hold on to everything tight.
Has anybody ever been able to evaluate how successful agnostics and atheists are?
I don't know.
I became a God unto myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I was my own God. I'm going to drink when I want, where I want, with whom I want, and however much I want. And my motto was, "You're not the boss of me."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you were going to do it on your own.
Absolutely.
That was your philosophy.
I can do her.
But what happened when you realized that you aren't God and started on your path to recovery?
Well, my deal was like what they refer to as a 1, 2, 3 step moment. Man, I knew it was out of control, and there was a God, and I wasn't it. And I was, at that absolute broken point where I cried out to a God that I'd long walked away from, and I couldn't do it on my own. I had to have help, and I was in full blown surrender.
Yep, me too. Yep, May 10th, 2010.
So let me rephrase what I originally asked.
Actually, it was the 9th. Sorry, go ahead.
Being able to retrace your life, and you might not be able to do this, but do you think if you'd have been able to surrender to Christ in your teens or in your early 20s, if you would have avoided all
I would have.
problems?
Yeah, I would have. God fills that void.
And maybe that might be the difference, that even though I made bad choices,
No, God fills that void. All right, Dennis, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure, Max. Thank you. I can't thank you enough.
Joe's gone again next week. You're welcome to come. Bob Montserrat, always nice to hear from you. Army Brad, King David, Father Tattoo. We appreciate you spending this time with us. Michael Mudloff True Blue from Westkirk Presbyterian is coming up next, and all I ask you to do between now and the time we meet again is one simple little thing. Please, for you, for me, for this station, just pray.